Well, this ought to be an interesting book review. 911 Synthetic Terror by Webster Tarpley. Talks about all the false flags. This is all the terror attacks that were done by somebody else and blamed on other people. In other words, insiders like the Illuminati or secret agencies would commit atrocities and terror attacks and blame it on who knows who. False flags. The snake strikes. Hello, it's Rick Miracle again with another book review. This time in October 30th, 2013, about 1:30 in the afternoon. The book I promised you on the last video was 911 Synthetic Terror by Webster Tarpley. I'm sure you can find a copy online or at your local bookstore. So I thought I'd read a little bit from this book and try to expose a little bit more of what appears to be going on in the world. The turmoil, the economic situation, Syria, Libya, Iran, Israel, Russia, China, the huge 13, 14, they keep changing the numbers, trillion we owe to the world banksters. In that last video I showed what they tell the public is not interest. So if we owe 13 trillion or 17 trillion, do we really owe 40 or 50 or 60 trillion? And will the government use its confiscation abilities, laws, if that debt gets called? Will chaos ensue across the United States? Well, we know 911 happened. That was the kickoff for the Bush to begin all his activities in the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, and then the Patriot Act, taking away our rights. And so many years ago, how many trillions are racked up in war debt? How much do us citizens owe for this fabricated terror situation? Well, let me read what Webster Tarpley has to say, and you decide. The European NATO partners were confronted, and all I did is highlighted some paragraphs that I thought would make the point that this book is worth reading. Maybe somebody should listen to Webster Tarpley. Maybe we could all find out what's going on. The European NATO partners were confronted with the need to evaluate the U.S. version of 911. Sorry about that. My phone rang. This is not a studio. This is my house, and I'm an amateur documentarian, I guess, a little bit. Hopefully I'm getting a little better. So let me continue. The European NATO partners were confronted with the need to evaluate the U.S. version of 911 in a very direct way. Immediately after 911, the Bush regime demanded the activation of Article 5 of the North Atlantic Pact, calling upon member states to assist the United States in warding off an attack from abroad. The U.S., however, had never offered any proof that the 911 attacks had indeed come from outside of its own borders. Under the shock of the 911 events, and fearing the retribution of a crazed regime, they're calling the USA, Bush and his team, presidency, a crazed regime that was announcing its determination to end states. You're not with us, you're against us. Bush was threatening the world. We'll send the might of the USA to wipe you out. That's what he was telling the world. Look how all the congressmen and representatives and senators and everybody just didn't ask why. Many of them, I'll bet you, knew why. What, the day before 911, $3 trillion from the Rumsfeld Pentagon budget was missing? I'll quit throwing my 2 cents in and read the book. The European allies approved the resolution unanimously, even though no proof had been provided. One who objected to this procedure was Helmut Schmidt, the former Chancellor and Defense Minister of Germany for the Social Democratic Party. Several months after the vote, Schmidt reiterated that the European acquiescence had been a mistake. So they just complied to whatever Bush wanted. And the German Chancellor said it was a mistake. For that article to be put into action, proof had to be delivered that the September 11th attacks came from abroad. The proof had not been provided, said Schmidt. It's in Webster Tarpley's book. I assume he's not fabricating the information. He's a reputable author. The Mossads are the Secret Service agency of Israel. The Mossad's false flag Al-Qaeda cell. Rashid Abu Subak, the head of the Palestine Preventive Security in the Gaza Strip, said on Friday, December 6, 2002, so a few months after 9/11, that his forces had identified a number of Palestinian collaborators who had been ordered by Israel security agencies to work in the Gaza Strip under the name of Al-Qaeda. Isn't Obama arming Al-Qaeda right now to attack Syria? Didn't Bush blame Al-Qaeda about attacking in the 9/11 situation? Something's not adding up. Palestine collaborators who had been ordered by Israeli security agents to work in the Gaza Strip under the name Al-Qaeda. Al Jazeera TV reported that the Palestinian authorities had arrested a group of Palestinian collaborators with Israeli occupation in Gaza, who were trying to set up an organization there in the name of bin Laden's Al-Qaeda. The Palestinian Authority spokesman said the members of the group had confessed that they were recruited and organized by Israeli intelligences. Mossad, organized by Israeli intelligence Mossad. Sharon had previously claimed on December 4th, 2002, that he had proof of Al-Qaeda operations in Gaza. So these operatives, calling themselves Al-Qaeda, were organized by Mossad, Israel's own intelligence agencies, and Sharon had personally claimed on December 4th, 2002, that he had proof that this same Al-Qaeda operations in the Gaza, he had proof of Al-Qaeda operations in Gaza, and used the allegations to justify brutal Israeli Defense Forces attacks in the Gaza Strip the next day, which was the start of the Islamic holiday Eid, celebrating the end of Ramadan. 10 civilians were killed in the IDF assaults. So Sharon was the prime minister for Israel. He says he has proof Al-Qaeda was operating in Palestine. The persons who were arrested said they were hired by Israeli Mossad to do covert operations. So as I've been saying for a long time and suspected, and for reason from reading all the books I'm reading, that the stuff that we read in the news about the bombings coming from Palestine, Gaza or the West Bank, and it makes the front page and a couple Israelis are bombed or killed, and that gives them the excuse to go in there and attack and bomb. And what they're doing is they're slowly evicting all the Palestinians, one person at a time. If it takes a week, a month, a year, 10 years, it's just an ongoing operation. Now, let me switch to something else about Mr. Sharon. And I say this a lot, and there's a few places on the internet where they'll say it's a hoax. Well, I don't think it is a hoax. It's too many places, been reported too many times. Sharon said, "We control America." You can look this up on the internet yourself. This particular one was at Media Monitors Network. Sharon, again, like President Bush is to the United States, or Chancellor Merkel is to the President of Germany, or Mr. Sharon is to the President of Israel. The titles change, but it's the same job. Sharon to Perez. We control America. Congressional pandering to Israel proves him right. I think a lot of people know that, and I've said this on several videos, from around 1955 or 50 to 1970, Israel got $90 billion in aid from the USA. Zionist Israel. Controlled by the Illuminati, who owns our bank. So I'll bet you those banks loaned our government money, our congressman who authorized this bill, $90 billion. We were borrowing that money to send to Israel, which we probably owe back 5 or 10 times that amount in interest and everything. And they own the bank that we borrowed from to send to them for aid. Does that make sense to you? Okay, on October 3rd, 2001, IAP News reported that according to Israeli radio, in Hebrew, Kol Yisrael, an acrimonious argument erupted during the Israeli cabinet weekly session last week between Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and his foreign minister Simon Peres. Peres warned Sharon that refusing to heed incessant American requests for a ceasefire with the Palestinians would endanger Israeli interests and turn the U.S. against us. Sharon reportedly yelled at Peres, "Don't worry about America. Pressure. Don't worry about American pressure. We, the Jewish people, control America." So all this stuff I'm reading to you, all this evidence, this could be a court case here, this could be a trial, this could be an investigation. All this material. This is Sharon's own words. They do control America. They did authorize the borrowing of the $90 billion to send to themselves, and that we owe back with interest, and all the wars. The Israelis control the policy in the Congress and the Senate. Senator Fulbright, chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, 10/7/1973. I am aware how almost impossible it is in this country to carry out a foreign policy in the Middle East not approved by the Jews. It's not my words, I'm reading the article. Terrific control the Jews have over the news media and the barrage the Jews have built up on congressmen. I'm very much concerned over the fact that the Jewish influence here is completely dominating the scene and making it almost impossible to get Congress to do anything they don't approve of. So if the Jewish control doesn't approve of it, our Congress is not going to do it. And remember, we're in an economic crisis right now, in wars, and the government's buying bullets, and they're building FEMA camps, and they're definitely not allowing any kind of religious mention in schools. They're promoting the Luciferian Zionist Illuminati program. Right on schedule. The Israeli embassy is practically dictating the Congress through influential Jewish people in the country. They're buying our congressmen and congresswomen with money. You can't get into office unless they support you, and they're not going to support you unless you do what they say. That's called the political action committees. Thousands of them. So let's say you agree to do what you're told. One phone call. 100 packs can be called, and you can get your legal $10,000. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, quoted on page 99 of Fallen Pillars by Donald Neff. The long history of bipartisan congressional support for Israel led former Secretary of State James Baker to call the Congress. The little Kisnet. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. Anyways, Secretary of State James Baker to call Congress the little Kisnet after Israel's kidnet. That's what they call the Israeli Parliament in Jerusalem. In the United States, of course, we have the Senate and the House of Representatives and the Senators. And we call it our Congress. Over there they call it the Kisnet. And James Baker called our Congress the little Kisnet. What I think about is funny about that is, in the other book I went over, Thomas Paine's Common Sense, Mr. Paine said it was kind of ridiculous for a little island, England, to rule a continent. Hence, at that time, we declared our independence and we had a war and we won. We had a nation created in 1776. Well, I equally say at this moment, it's ridiculous for a tiny little dot on the map state to rule this continent, but it certainly says here that they do. And I believe right now they are raping us of all our wealth and our freedoms. Congress's embarrassing and unpatriotic display of allegiance to a foreign country that is dependent on American largesse and support is the unknown scandal to the American people. With the media's strong, biased, and sympathetic portrayal of Israel, all propaganda in the newspapers that they own, just like the Federal Reserve that belongs to the Illuminati, which controlled and created the newfound country of Israel with the Zionist state that's destined, I suppose, to rule the world and force communism on the USA people with the Communist Manifesto I read to you on the last video, where they can confiscate our wealth and take away our property rights. Not like our Constitution, which protects the right of free speech and protects the right for us to bear arms. They're trying to switch it out with the Communist Manifesto, which gives us no rights. So the Illuminati control the Zionists, and the Zionists control us. And the Illuminati also control us. We have two factions of the same satanic monster. The unknown scandal to the American people, with the media's strong, biased, and sympathetic portrayal of Israel, while simultaneously denying any opposing view of Israel or human pictures and stories of the endless suffering of the Palestinians. It's no wonder that we, the American people, are so unaware of the true face of Israel. Thus, shockingly, but not surprisingly, only 4% of the American people are aware of Israel's 34-year brutal military occupation of the Palestine people. Remember, World War I, which was created after the Federal Reserve was secretly created on December 23rd, 1913, was to weaken Russia so that they could take over Russia to establish a whole continent of communists to force it on the whole world. What a beast they created. Only at times of war and threat upon the U.S. does our Senate ever exhibit a strong bipartisan support of America. It regularly provides Israel. So our congressman doesn't unite on anything unless it's almost a point of war. Despite our current crisis in the airline security, congressional political bickering continued for weeks between Republicans and Democrats, placing American lives at risk while foreign aid to Israel was quick and automatic. About $6 billion. I suppose that's $6 billion every year. Even at a time, the Congress is telling us the budget deficits and lack of money for the unemployed American workers. Well, they just shut down the USA recently. And they've been playing with the idea of cutting off the food stamps and prophesizing riots and everything. It's what they did in all their other revolutions, communists. They're not that smart. They keep following the same plan. But we're stupider than them because we don't seem to wake up. As an American, I am outraged to the blind historical allegiance of our senators have provided Israel, why they neglect many of our pressing domestic issues, such as airline security, Social Security, Medicaid reform, education reform, health insurance for the needy Americans, money for dilapidated schools, and prescription coverage for the elderly. Our Congress operates on the premise that most Americans are disinterested in foreign policy, thus they have a vacuum to provide Israel with blank checks and our latest F-16 fighter jets that Israel used to kill Palestine citizens. This was written in 2001, 1973. Now that we're using drones. It's funny how this history documents everything. F-16 fighter jets used to kill Palestinian civilians. They depend on our media to keep us uninformed and distracted with sports, Harry Potter, scandals, drugs, medications, I'm adding some more, mind control, decadent TV, insane movies, end of the world by flood, end of the world by asteroid, end of the world by the planet blowing up. You think it's all just a coincidence? It's as much of a coincidence as when I went over, I haven't done this book yet, but I keep going back to it because the same banksters at that time, from 1000 AD to 1300 AD, this is 2013 AD, so for 300 years, the banksters out of Venice, same Illuminati people, they were Jewish elites, and they were intermarrying with the hierarchy, the kings and queens and dukes and counts and princesses of England and France and Germany. These Zionist Jewish folks were just seething at the bit to try to be up there in the high echelon of society. They were the banksters. So anyways, they're the ones who supplied, the funds to the Vatican and the kings and the queens of England and Spain and France and Italy to have all these wars. And they charged interest. And they had all the gravy situations of supplying all the food and the weapons and the horses and the shipping. They were brokers. They were making a ton of money. And we remember reading this book by Henry Macau, Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. War and depression are forms of extortion. It's right here. Page 138. Get this book. Everything I'm telling you is all supported. This book here. To eliminate the opaque. That means people who believe in God. They think believing in God, which I do, gives people a sense of, the good commandments of decency, morality, and they want to take decency and morality out of our world and give us a Luciferian world. Anyways, reform comes to America. So if a major challenge facing world Jewry is the shape of the Judaism we fashion. So they're refashioning the USA, and they do not want Jesus in the USA. So let's go back to this book, my book review, and read a little more, now that I made a couple sidebars there. And I'll be quick about it. But Saudi Arabia, the parting of ways with the U.S. August 2001. This was before September 2001, 9/11. Most significant of all were the signs that even Saudi Arabia, long considered a client state or even a ward of the United States, that's like an adopted child, was considering breaking away from the U.S. system. Here the falling dollar, Bush's slavish support of Sharon, remember Sharon's the guy who says he controls America? So Bush wasn't slavish. Well, I guess he was a slave if Sharon said he controls us. Bush's slavish support of Sharon and preparations for a new U.S. attacks on Arab states were doubtless playing a role. According to the Wall Street Journal, Saudi Crown Prince Abdullah sent a letter to Bush at the end of August 2001. September. So a month later we had September 11, 9/11. No, it wasn't even a month. So a couple weeks after he got that letter, we had 9/11. So I wonder what was in that letter. What prompted the Bush administration to do this dirty deed, if they did it, the Illuminati, and warned him in reference to the U.S.-Saudi relationship that a time comes when people and nations part. The letter went on to say, it is time for the United States and Saudi Arabia to look at their separate interests. Those governments that don't feel the pulse of the people and respond to it will suffer the fate of the Shah of Iran. Well, Prince Abdullah read from this letter at a meeting of 150 prominent Saudis in October 2001. So this was after September now. So we had a before and an after of this letter. In an effort to convince them that the Saudi government is defending Arab and Muslim interests. During a phone call with Bush around the same time, Abdullah again called for the U.S. to restrain Israel. Well, Sharon was controlling Bush, and so it was probably causing a little bit of friction between the Saudi adopted country we were taking care of and loving. Bush family has a long history with Saudi Arabia. And Israel, who was the one that pulls the strings in the USA. There's plenty of documentation here to show that. Diplomats said that there was considerable debate within the Saudi royal family over U.S. war in Afghanistan and the cost of the U.S.-Saudi relationship. One Western diplomat said the failure to resolve the Middle East conflict was going to make it harder for Saudi Arabia to continue its relationship with the U.S. in the same manner. So we can bet catering to all these people's needs is costing the USA a lot of money. And reputation throughout the world. And you know who's going to pay for this? They have to find the money somewhere. Because the banksters want their 13 trillion, 17 trillion. So if they slip the United States into an economic collapse of money, declare martial law, install communism, and confiscate everybody's property, wow, they have a way to pay this bill. And still come out on top, except the United States people will be dead or enslaved. Just my interpreting. Saudi Arabia was the pillar of the U.S. empire. Saudi Arabia was the pillar of our empire. And by the way, why does the USA have an empire? Think in Britain and London, they used to have the United Empire, and that collapsed. The Russian Empire collapsed. Why are we trying to create an empire? I don't think we are. I think the forces that are creating the New World Order, the Illuminati that is conspired to get Israel and Palestine, is creating an empire. And the United States and its citizens are going to be scapegoats. You know what a scapegoat is? It's the people who take a fall. For the imperialists, action was imperative to prevent this critical defection. So they really didn't want Saudi Arabia to leave. So they had to make some kind of deal. And what do you bet that the United States people were fleeced? Money changed hands, and we owe the debt. What do you want to bet? All right, I'm going to take a 2-second break and be right back. All right, page 136. The CIA's Arab Legion. Remember the French Legion? Al-Qaeda, the CIA's Arab Legion. I thought these guys, this is Alta and Company, the place where they were training pilots. I thought these guys were double agent. Former executive Hoffman Aviation, Venice, Florida. Al-Qaeda is in its best-known leader, bin Laden, would not exist without the help of the United States, which created them for use against the USSR, Russia, in the Afghanistan war, and which continues to support them to this day. At various times, the U.S. Special Forces have been bin Laden's valets. So the Special Forces are catering these guys around in limos, you think? They must need them and using them for special ops. The State Department has acted at his Defense Council, bin Laden's, and his Travel Bureau. So bin Laden needs to go anywhere, he calls the State Department. And I can't do that. You can't do that. You book me a trip down to Brazil, please? And the CIA has furnished his public relations advisors and his preferred health plan. I don't even have a health plan. I'm an American. You have a health plan? The British government has acted as his human resources department to recruit new personnel. So they're finding all kinds of Arabs and giving them money to join the Al-Qaeda team. Moving down here, it says, I've already said that I'm not involved in the September 11th attacks in the United States. As a Muslim, I try my best to avoid telling a lie. This is bin Laden on a Pakistani newspaper interview. I had no knowledge of these attacks, nor do I consider the killing of innocent women, children, and other humans an appreciable act. So he's saying he doesn't believe in killing innocent people. And he's on a Pakistani radio program. And then we're supposed to believe he's sending video cassettes to our government to put in the paper. It's all propaganda to fool the people. What's it going to take to wake people up? For me to do a whole 100 videos and review 100 books? Alright, now I'm at page 173. In order to be accused of playing the role of suicide pilots, the 911 patsies needed to have a smattering of flight training. Remember, these bin Laden's recruits were recruited by the CIA and other security agencies, so they probably had an operation going on, so they had to have a smattering of flight training. What actual experience they were able to acquire in this process is something we'll examine. But it is already clear that the flight lessons were mostly for show. Ironically, they were conducted in South Florida, in a neighborhood which is redolent of the CIA covert operations of yesteryear. Remember Cuba? The Bay of Pigs, to Watergate, to Iran-Contra. I guess all this was done at the CIA operations down there in the Miami area. The school for patsies was located in the backyard of the CIA Miami station, just down the road from U.S. Central Command. Yeah, you ought to get this book. I'm not asking you to believe me. This guy's the well-known author. Webster Tarpley, by the way, if you go on YouTube, before you even get the book, you can watch some of his speeches. All these authors that I see here, I go online and I find their videos and watch them and get a more diversified point of view and the consistency. I investigate the investigators, by the way. And I'm a symbologist. I'm trying to figure out what all the symbols mean. I just looked up today. Here's something funny. I just looked up today. The snake. I want to show you something here. And if you can take a moment and pause this, it's very, very important. Anyways, Satanism in Hollywood and the Media. It's a YouTube video. And during watching that video, there were 2 books and many others referenced by the documentarian who made this video, Satanism in Hollywood and the Media. The one book was called Guide by Kenny Kingston, and the other one was Hollywood and the Supernatural by Steiger. Why I keep bringing that up, because remember, the names of my videos are Masonry and Satanism. And it seems like Gene Roddenberry, Sammy Davis Jr., Marilyn Monroe, if you watch this video, that Hollywood is a very occultic town. They see psychics, they do meditation classes, they go into trances, and they communicate with demons. And even Lady Gaga and a lot of the other people have, if you go on YouTube, you'll find the confessions that they made to deal with the devil. And they even get possessed. Gene Roddenberry said he got his best scripts by going into a trance state and communicating with the other side. I can only suspect they were demonic. Demons, ones in the Bible that Jesus said to cast out. Anyways, Gene Roddenberry said that his Star Trek series, for example, he got a lot of his scripts from this occultic realm. So what I'm trying to, and I watch Star Trek now, and I see it in a whole different light. It's like, oh my God. Because I started out my research 10 years ago as a psychic researcher, considering the fact that I was an electronic engineering technician at a major aerospace company for 10 years, working on the space shuttle, F-18 Jet B-1B bomber, and satellites in space. I was interested in alternate energy so we could get away from nuclear power and gas and oil and etc. So I wanted to find out the secrets of nature, free energy. And I discovered things that a lot of the famous scientists, when they were young, like Nikola Tesla, were seeing apparitions and ghosts and hearing voices and communicating with the other side. Just like Gene Roddenberry in that video I just told you. So my point is, to this whole thing, Masonry and Satanism, and why they're doing this and why they fabricated, contrived 911 is for a bigger goal, which is sort of biblical. It is biblical. And they wrote the Protocols of Zion. And here's something interesting. This is 2013 is the year of the snake in Chinese astrology. Did you know that? Look it up. It's kind of fascinating. Anyway, Zionism, their symbol is the snake. Look it up. And Luciferian, it's all about the money. And people being destroyed, beguiled. It's a big deception. And I'm not anti-Semitic because I support all these Jews and these authors here that you just saw who are fighting the same thing that I'm fighting, the deception of us people. Again, you've seen this in the world order. Masonry and Satanism. Our politicians all over the world have been used. They wouldn't be in office if they weren't controllable. They have almost taken over our country. They have our capital. Israel is growing from here to here. They want to shut us up. Oh, by the way, it was in the news today that the government is saying they're going to have to start cracking down on people who don't agree with the government opinion or a storyline like 911. They want to get rid of us truthers. They want more of this so they can reduce the population and kill off the people. Our presidents have been always, Bush and Obama and others, all the people around them, pretty much 99%, are either dual citizens, Jewish people, Zionists. And if you know anything about the Jewish religion, they don't like to actually mingle with other religions and other people. And if you go on jpost.com, the leading Israeli newspaper, and read some of the press releases and then go down into the comment section, like we have here in the U.S. on the internet, you will see the actual citizens' opinions, and they call Jesus a dog and a lot of other horrible things. They call him a little man. But there's a lot of Jewish people who want to end this because they know it's not going to end well. There's the game plan. Snake is the sign of Israel. And there's Jesus Christ for Christianity. Is Israel planning to be a much larger state? Small dot up there. And then the new borderline is way down here. And if you look at it, it says Oman, Yemen, Iraq. That's a lot of land. And the United States is having to borrow their money from their institutions to fight their war so they can take over the world, and then we owe them the money so they can collapse us, so they can confiscate our property and our rights and enslave us. And nobody seems to be concerned about it. Like I said, Henry McCall wrote his book, so did a lot of other people. Guess they go on the wall and put a little stamp when they wipe out a country. Protocols of Zion, I keep telling you, go on Life for Free, look it up. All started back 4,000 years ago when Moses helped the Hebrews get out of Egypt. He went up to the mountain. When he came back down, they were having a big party with a golden calf. That was their god Moloch. See how they're dancing and partying? Well, this is what we get in the USA. Somebody's playing with us. I don't like it. And Henry Ford's book, where he a compilation of some of his stuff. See all the markers I have here? I could do this whole book and make 20 videos right here. There's so much in here. So anyways, I did get one of his newspapers we did in my last video. And he bought a newspaper because what did he call it? He wanted to get the truth out that the corporate media, Illuminati controlled, the Rockefeller. Quoted on a video on YouTube, you can read it, see it. Saying, he had a consultant. He goes, well, how many newspapers do I have to buy to control the media? And that's maybe 40, 50. And he did, and he controls the media. So Henry Ford, with all his power, the automaker, bought a newspaper and got the word out. And then the word got amongst the Jewish Congress and everywhere that they were to stop buying his cars if he didn't shut up. The United Nations is involved in this, so I thought I'd read a little paragraph here. The Great Seal of the United States. The strange and fascinating history of the Great Seal of the United States has been included in this study because, 1, the symbolism of the meditation room mural centers around the all-seeing eye, which is on the dollar bill, which also appears above the pyramid on the reverse side of the Great Seal. 2, both sides of the seal are prominent features in the mosaic window in the prayer room in the United States. 3, the all-seeing eye is symbolized in the Temple of Understanding. And 4, both sides of the seal appear on the $1 bill because of the same occult influences that was involved in the establishment of the meditation room. So like I said, the Hollywood issue with Gene Roddenberry, Marilyn Monroe, Sammy Davis Jr., who was a huge member of the Church of Satan and got a lot of other Hollywood stars to go to the Church of Satan. Masonry and Satanism, Illuminati, Zionism, globalists, banksters, New World Order. This is all one in the same. They needed to pull off 911. You need to read this book. At least go online and see some of Webster Tarpley's videos, free. So here we have the seal appears on the dollar bill because of the same occult influence as was involved in the establishment of the meditation room, prayer room, and Temple of Understanding. Arthur Schusslinger Jr. in his book, The Coming of the New Deal, published in 1958, so this is going on quite a while, 100 years or more, 1860, 1870, Albert Pike did Morals and Dogma, and described the 3 world wars needed to pull off this New World Order, which was basically to bring around the Luciferian takeover of the country and the world and get rid of Jesus and all the other religions of the world. So this is a big conspiracy to bring Satanism into the world, which, if you went to Bible school as a kid, that's what they were told that was going to happen. They were going to give people the mark of the beast, 666. If you didn't take it, you couldn't buy or sell anything. Anyways, the New Deal, published in 1958, provided his readers with a remarkable candid portrait of Henry Wallace, one-time Vice President of the United States, according to Schlesinger. The occult fascinated Vice President Henry Wallace. He saw special significance in the Great Seal of the United States and its conception of unity out of diversity. So they want to take all the other religions and make us all Luciferic, which is all the decadent stuff, greed, murder, mayhem, sex, and drugs. I hope anybody out there with any common sense knows that the planet won't bode well if that's the way the whole planet goes. Is that what you want for your children? A lot of people out there laughing and going, yeah, let's go. You've been brainwashed. It's sick. And even more on the reverse side of the seal, the incomplete pyramid. And there's another book I was reading that I've read, The Jewish State by Theodore Herschel. And I thought I'd just read a small paragraph here. The land which the Society of Jews will have secured by international law must, of course, be privately acquired. So when did he write this book? It's way back. In 1896. Here we go, right there back down when Albert Pike did Morals and Dogma. 1896. So let's see what they said in 1896 and see if they're pulling it off. The land which the Society of Jews will have secured by international law must of course be privately acquired. Remember, after World War I, they started making life difficult all over the world, and they were privately buying property over there in Palestine and moving people, even before the United Nations after World War II, because the Balfour Agreement of World War I, that London had promised to give them the land after World War I for their support in the world. The London just couldn't give up on, sell the Arabs out at that time. So it took another world war so that the League of Nations collapsed, and the United Nations, which was the replacement, all controlled by the Illuminati, Zionists, gangsters, banksters, globalists, New World Order folks. They did get the land of Israel, parts of Palestine, which, as we saw on the map I just showed you, is growing leaps and bounds. And they've been propagating, as I read in the book there, fake terror attacks like 9/11, the Oklahoma City bombing, and I suspect the Batman movie, the Sandy Hook shooting, the Boston bombing on 666 Boylston Street in Boston. 666 Boylston Street. A lot of symbolism going on. Okay, so anyways, in his book, Theodore Herschel, that's the Jewish star, in, 1896, Masonry and Satanism, I'm telling you. The Masonry portion's pretty much, mostly the non-Jewish side of this conspiracy of Illuminati. People bought and bribed. And the Zionism is the Jewish side, but it's just one hand and another hand. Two hands. One body. Can you understand that? Be privately acquired. Provisions made by individuals for their own settlement do not come within the province of this general account. That the company will require large areas for its own needs and ours. The company. That's the Illuminati. Zionists. It will negotiate principally for the acquisition of fiscal domains with the great object of taking possession of this land. Over there. Without paying a price too high. In the same way as it sells here without accepting one too low. A forcing of prices is not to be considered, because the value of land will be created by the company through its organizing the settlement in conjunction with the supervising Jewish Society of Jews. The latter will see to it that the enterprise does not become a Panama, but a Suez. So they want a successful Suez Canal, not a unsuccessful, at this particular time, Panama situation. The company, the Illuminati Zionists, will sell building sites at reasonable rates to its officials and allow them to mortgage these for the building of their homes, deducting amount due from their salaries and putting it down on their accounts as increased enrollment. So again, 100 years ago, they were planning this. Anybody doubt that? Anyways, I would very, very much, if I was anybody, I would go see this video. Maybe buy one of those books or two and convince yourself that there is a satanic, occultic, demonic nature to this whole thing. And some of the books I do in the future will dwell on that, a little more of the science of demonology and occult witchcraft, which is now advanced into high-tech black op programs by our nuclear scientists like CERN, that big spiral we saw in Norway in the news, UFO sightings, orbs in the sky. I saw some orbs not too long ago. One of the videos I'll show you them. And Jesus Christ in the Bible casting out demons. From 1840 to 1940, there was a Psychic Research Society of England, of Europe. First it was England and Europe. And then later, a couple of years, they created the Psychic Research Society of America. Thick volumes of books can be purchased. And they sent out investigators to ghost sightings and table rappings, and they used to have seances, and people could call forth apparitions and demons and talk to people on the other side. And then all of a sudden it went underground. What did our black ops, our scientists, our nuclear physicists, what did they learn? Did they learn how to open up portals and allow these demonic beings to come and go? I know I'm going off the deep end here, but I'm telling you, it's Masonry and Satanism is by video. And people are not going to buy into the Satan and Lucifer part because they just don't believe in it, even if they look up and see an orange orb. Even if the movie stars on that video admit it. What is it going to take for people to realize this is true? I have a soul. This is my body here. Without the soul, if they plucked it out of me, the body would just plop over. Same thing if you had a laptop computer not plugged in and you pulled the battery out, it wouldn't work. Your soul is energy, and it runs this body, all the billions of cells in your body. And if you look, there's books, and you can buy at the library, read at the library, or buy at the bookstore, where nurses and doctors have written these books. They see the apparitions leave the body at death. Well, I'm back. I guess you can see I'm not for lack of any words or ideas. So pardon me if I ramble on sometimes. But I think this stuff is important. So back to this book to finish up. Seismic evidence. The seismic effects of the collapse of the towers were observed and measured by Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory just up the Hudson River in Palisades, New York. So they looked at the seismic records of the 911 towers falling. Here seismographs recorded 2 spikes reflecting 2 shock waves in the earth on the morning of 911. The crucial fact is that these 2 spikes came just before the collapse of the towers. Specifically, Columbia scientists at the facility registered a tremor of 2.1 on the Richter scale at 9:59:04. Just before the beginning of the collapse of the South Tower. Huh. Think there was some nukes inside, like everybody says? Why they fell like they were detonated? Demolished? And a 2.3 shock just as the North Tower began to come down at 10:28:31 in the morning. Both tremors were recorded before the vast majority of the mass of the buildings hit the ground. Although they were not of earthquake proportions, they were considerable shocks, about 20 times more potent than any previously measured shock wave generated by a falling building. 20 times more. So I guess, when I read this book, I was a little, besides all the other books and investigation I have done on 911, I'm fairly convinced it was an inside job. And until they arrest the people, the culprits, they're not going to be able to trust this government, which isn't even a government. Remember, Sharon of Israel says they control us. The Illuminati, the banksters in 1913, he who controls the money controls the politicians. He don't care who's the president. A crucial French account. This will be the last portion I read out of this book. During the weeks after 911, the Rue Voltaire of Paris represented one of the strongest voices, it's a magazine, calling the official version into question. Rose Voltaire's most prominent writer was Thierry Meillassin, a well-known civil rights activist. In his book on 911, La Froyable Imposture, I'm probably saying that wrong, it's French, was primarily a demonstration that the official thesis of a large commercial airliner striking the Pentagon was absurd and impossible. Well, it was a small hole that a jet couldn't fit into, and there were no pieces on the ground. You think a jet really went in there? But Myasin also focused on the central political institutional questions posed by 911, especially the angel question. You're going to find this interesting. For Myasin, the plotters used top secret code words suggested that they had access to other codes, including the U.S. nuclear missile launch codes. So they probably didn't tell you this, and you probably don't know this, but the White House got some phone calls by the perpetrators. And they used code words like angel, and that was the code word for launching the nuclear USA nukes. So with that code word, whoever got the message with the nukes would believe you were the President of the United States and fire the nukes. So apparently these phone calls that our government got after 911 and before was a blackmail threat. At the heart of 911 was therefore a blackmail threat to the Bush regime that if he refused to launch the war of civilizations, the plotters were in a position to do it on their own in a much more sweeping manner by launching a U.S. nuclear strike against a series of Arab and Islamic capitals. Whatever the Russian and Chinese attitude to such a launch might have been was not specified. Well, we already know it would have nuked us back. Myasin's thesis was that from 10 a.m. to approximately 8 p.m. that day, on September 11th, U.S. government officials were not thinking that this was the work of Arab terrorists. So now the plot thickens. They were scapegoats. Just like we're going to be scapegoats in the USA when they collapse the dollar on purpose and all this fabricated debt that they borrowed to fight these other people's war, they're going to have to confiscate the U.S. people's wealth, which will basically just take everybody's power away and enslave the people and shoot the people. And my friend Tim, that phone call I just got a second ago in Santa Fe, New Mexico, apparently on the news is they're starting to cut back on the food stamps, and apparently there's a lot of threats of riots. On October 30th, Halloween, interesting day for that, 2013. So from 10 a.m. to approximately 8 p.m. on September 11th, U.S. government officials were not thinking this was the work of Arab terrorists, but rather that it was an expression of a military coup being carried out by the U.S.-based extremists who were capable of provoking a nuclear war. Hence my videos, Masonry and Satanism. I should have named it Masonry, Satanism, Illuminati, and Zionism. Globalists and banksters. That would have been a little bit more accurate. Zionism, the snake. They worship Lucifer, the devil. Basics who are capable of provoking a nuclear war. On his website and in his later books, The Big Lie and The Pentagate, Myasin offered a detailed analysis of the events of the day, with special stress on the insurrectionary behavior of the U.S. rogue network. So we have what we call insurrectionary people, the Illuminati, in the United States, vying to take over. He narrates that at about 10:05, the Secret Service is in charge of protecting the top personalities, reportedly received an encoded telephone call from the assailants. It wasn't Bin Laden, it's the guys with box cutters. They thus would have had at their disposal transmission and authentication codes for the White House and Air Force One. In other words, the security of the top American leaders was no longer guaranteed, and the enemies of America were able to usurp the identity of President Bush, including the order to nuclear launch. According to Brian L. Stafford, director of the Secret Service, it is not a matter of United States facing terrorist actions, but facing a situation of war. Well, there you have it. All this stuff I'm proving to you is true. Just thought I'd show you this. InfoWars on the internet. This edition here is all about false flags. In other words, the Illuminati doing bombings and other things and blaming it on people so they can create security situations to enslave us. The Boston bombing was the equivalent of a drone strike. You can go on Infowars.com and order these magazines. Retired Army captain warns Department of Homeland Security acquisitions. Are a bold threat of war against the American people. Our government is buying, it says on the bottom here, 3,000 mine-resistant ambush-protected armored personnel carriers in the USA. Why do they need those? Us citizens aren't a threat. Are we? 2 billion bullets purchased. It says right here why government should be the first suspect in the terrorist attack. So whenever there's a terrorist attack, we need to look at our own people. Anyways, I'm not going to read all this to you. You can go on Infowars and I encourage you. Infowars.com. Just wanted to show you some of the stuff that's out there. Terror in the modern age. So basically what you have is you have these evil people creating these situations. It's called a false flag. Like 911, the people, the box cutters didn't do it. It was those people with the secret codes threatening the United States with a nuclear attack unless Bush complied and did the Afghan war and the Iraq war. And I suppose Obama's under the same control. I found this on the internet. You can look it up. The symbol of snake to Zion. The symbolic snake of Zion. See the size of the country? Protocol 3. Remember the protocols of Zion we looked at? Protocol 3 opens with a reference to the symbolic snake of Judaism. In his epilogue to the 1905 edition of the Protocols, Nillis gives the following interesting account of this symbol. According to the records of secret Jewish Zionism, Solomon and other Jewish learned men already in 929 BC thought out a scheme in theory for a peaceful conquest of the world, of the whole universe by Zion. Oh, they don't want just the world here, they want the whole universe. As history developed, the scheme was worked out in detail and completed by men who were subsequently initiated in this question. These learned men decided by peaceful means to conquer the world of Zion, for Zion, with the slyness of the symbolic snake. Stuff you can find online. Then I got the, looked up here, this is the Chinese year of the snake. There's some interesting things here. In the Chinese zodiac, the snake is listed after the dragon. Carries the meanings of malevolence, cattiness, and mystery. And we did do this book here, Fritz Springmeyer's Bloodline of the Illuminati. And like I said, everybody from the Russell family, Rothschild family, Rockefeller, Kennedy, DuPont, Collins, Astor, they're all related to kings and queens, and they're all the blue blood. That's the Illuminati, folks. And they created Zionism, and they're trying to take over the world with all the banks. And it's they want to run the world like a factory. They don't want any lazy workers. They don't want any sick workers. They don't want any old workers. All those people will have to go away and die. And they don't need any people with any kind of wealth to interfere or question their activities, so you have to have all your property confiscated. I suppose that is enough for this video, because it's enough for me. And I would prefer to be doing something else. And I do this because there's only two choices. Stand up and do something, and hopefully we can turn this around. Or just wait till they come for us. I'm not the guy to sit around and waiting for them to come to me. Not when we, you and me and everybody else, can wake up and turn this around. And like they prayed to Lucifer, and they, in the sacrifice, cremation, and care, in the Bohemian Grove in California that Alex Jones videoed, that you can look on YouTube and look up, and they throw a baby into the fire, and they have sacrifices all over the world throughout history to Lucifer, then you should know that when you pray and you speak to God, He listens. So God bless, and please wake up, and thank you for watching my videos. My email is rickmiracle, like it's a miracle, at yahoo.com. If you got any positive comments, I don't need negative comments, because I will know you're a Zionist or a Satanist, and you're just trying to ruin my day, and I know who you are, so don't send me negative comments. I'm not telling people to believe me. I'm telling people to not believe me. I'm saying take some notes, look it up. I'm reading out of the books. I'd like you to look at these books. I'm just giving you some clues. And again, if you wake up, and we all wake up, and we stop these people, then the 13 or 17 trillion we owe won't turn into 50 trillion, and they won't have to take everything we own to put us in FEMA camps and kill us. Just saying. It is what it is. My friend Charlie used to say that all the time. Anyways, God bless. Wake up. This is video number 13. And this is Halloween Day of all crazy days. In the year of the Chinese snake, talking about the cult of Zion, which is symbolized by the snake. Crazy. I know. Thanks.